Admiral James Walker stood at the main window of Earth Defense Command, his weathered face reflecting off the reinforced glass as he stared at the night sky. The stars looked different tonight. Some of them were moving. "Sir, energy readings are off the charts," reported Captain Smith, his voice steady despite the tension in the room. "Whatever's up there, it's bigger than anything we've ever seen." The massive screens behind them displayed a terrifying sight. Dozens of objects, each larger than the biggest aircraft carrier ever built, were decelerating as they approached Earth's orbit. Their energy signatures made Earth's most powerful nuclear reactors look like birthday candles in comparison. "Get me every military leader on the line," Walker ordered, his eyes never leaving the sky. "And someone wake up the president." Before the communications officer could respond, every screen in the command center flickered to life simultaneously. A figure appeared, tall, humanoid, but definitely not human. Its skin had a metallic sheen, and its eyes glowed with an unnatural purple light. "People of Earth," the alien began, its voice translated into perfect English by their own systems. "I am Imperial Commander Dex of the Galactic Empire. Your primitive world now falls under our jurisdiction. You have 48 hours to surrender and begin integration into our empire, or face immediate annihilation." Walker's jaw tightened. Humanity's first contact with alien life, and they were already being threatened with extinction. "This is Admiral James Walker of the United Earth Defense Force. We request time to discuss your terms." The alien commander's laugh echoed through the speakers. "Discuss? What is there to discuss? Your most advanced weapons are barely sufficient to leave your own atmosphere. Your ships would take centuries to reach even your nearest stellar neighbors. You are children playing with sticks, while we command the power of stars." As if to demonstrate his point, one of the Imperial ships fired a beam of energy at a defunct satellite. The satellite didn't explode. It simply ceased to exist, leaving not even dust behind. 48 hours, Commander Dex repeated, and the transmission cut off. In the following hours, the command center became a hive of activity. Military leaders from every nation gathered, either in person or through secure channels. Scientists analyzed every bit of data they could gather about the alien ships. Something interesting began to emerge. "Admiral, you need to see this," Dr. Wilson called out, waving Walker over to his station. "We've been analyzing their shield technology. It's incredibly advanced. It can stop any energy weapon we could possibly develop. But look at this." The scientist pointed to a series of readings. "Their shields are designed to stop high-energy weapons, particle beams, plasma, but they barely register simple kinetic impacts. They're so focused on stopping advanced weapons that they've completely overlooked basic physics." Walker leaned closer, his mind racing. "Are you saying?" "Yes," Dr. Wilson nodded, excitement creeping into his voice. "A simple metal slug, fired from an old-fashioned cannon, would pass right through their shields as if they weren't even there. They're so advanced, they've forgotten about basic ballistic weapons." For the first time since the aliens appeared, Walker smiled. He turned to the room full of military leaders. "Ladies and gentlemen, I think we just found our edge. Get me every World War I-era weapon specification you can find, and contact every museum with military exhibits. We're going to need their help." As the orders went out, Walker looked back at the alien ships through the window. They hung in the sky like arrogant gods, sure of their superiority. They had given Earth 48 hours, expecting surrender. Instead, humanity would give them the fight of their lives. "You know what your problem is," Walker muttered to the distant ships. "You've forgotten that sometimes the oldest solutions are the best ones, and we remember them all." Around the world, ancient artillery pieces were being pulled out of museums. World War I-era battleship plans were being studied. Factory workers were being roused from their beds to restart production lines that hadn't run in decades. The Empire had made a crucial mistake. They had expected to find a primitive civilization cowering in fear. Instead, they had awakened a sleeping giant that remembered every way to fight that had ever been invented, and was ready to use them all. Major Tom Miller watched from the cockpit of his modified F-22 as museum workers loaded World War I-era shells into his plane's new external pods. The sight would have been funny if Earth's survival wasn't at stake. "This is either the smartest or dumbest thing we've ever done," his wingman commented over the radio. Around them, dozens of fighters were being loaded with similar primitive weapons. "Time's up, humans." Imperial Commander Dex's voice boomed across all frequencies. "Prepare for your extermination." The massive Imperial ships began moving into attack formation. Their energy weapons charged, creating beautiful but deadly auroras in the upper atmosphere. "All units, Operation Thunderstrike is go." Admiral Walker's voice came through clear and strong. "Remember your training. They're expecting energy weapons and modern missiles. Let's show them how humans fought before computers existed." Miller led his squadron up through the clouds. The alien ships loomed above them, their shields creating rainbow-like distortions in the air. The Imperial fighters ignored the approaching Earth planes, their sensors likely dismissing them as harmless relics. "First wave, release chaff and commence attack," Miller ordered. Hundreds of small metal strips scattered through the air. An old trick from World War II, used to confuse radar. The Imperial ships' advanced sensors, designed to track energy signatures and heat patterns, were suddenly blinded by thousands of simple metal reflections. "What is this primitive interference?" An Imperial commander's frustrated voice leaked through their communications. "Ignore it. Fire on their cities." That was exactly what Earth's forces had been waiting for. As the Imperial ships charged their main weapons, they dropped their shields for a fraction of a second, just as Dr. Wilson had predicted. "All units, fire at will," Miller commanded. The sky filled with metal. Simple lead shells, steel core bullets, and tungsten rods, weapons that hadn't seen war in over half a century, streaked toward the alien ships. The Imperial commanders, expecting energy weapons they could easily deflect, watched in horror as these primitive projectiles tore through their unshielded hulls. "Impossible." Commander Dex's voice crackled with rage. "Their weapons are worthless. They shouldn't be able to." His transmission cut off as a restored World War I anti-aircraft gun, fired from the ground, punched a hole straight through his ship's command center. Miller's squadron made another pass, this time targeting the smaller Imperial fighters. The alien pilots tried to engage in energy weapon combat, but Earth's fighters were using techniques from when planes could only fire forward. They turned dogfighting into a brawl, using maneuvers that hadn't been seen since propeller planes ruled the skies. "Keep pushing," Admiral Walker encouraged over the command channel. "Their shields are useless against kinetic weapons. This is how our grandfathers fought." The Imperial fleet, which had arrived expecting an easy victory, was in chaos. Their sophisticated targeting systems couldn't lock onto aircraft flying in simple patterns. Their shields, designed to stop lasers and plasma, did nothing against solid metal. Their commanders had no protocols for dealing with weapons their civilization had outgrown millennia ago. "Major Miller, you have incoming," his wingman warned. 3 Imperial fighters had finally figured out they needed to physically ram the Earth aircraft to stop them. Miller smiled and pulled a maneuver that hadn't been used since the Battle of Britain. A simple split S that the alien pilots, reliant on their computers, couldn't follow. All 3 Imperial fighters crashed into each other. "This is Task Force 7, a new voice called over the radio. We've breached the hull of the Imperial carrier. Their internal defenses. They don't even have physical armor, just energy shields." Miller looked up to see soldiers with simple assault rifles boarding the alien ship through the holes created by their ballistic weapons. The Empire had forgotten that sometimes the simplest solution was the best one. "All units, press the attack," Admiral Walker commanded. "The Empire just learned that humanity doesn't need fancy weapons to win a fight. We just need gravity and good aim." Above Earth, the mighty Imperial fleet was learning a harsh lesson. Never underestimate a species that keeps its old weapons, just in case. Lieutenant Anna Reed walked through the captured Imperial ship, her boots making hollow sounds on the metal floor. Around her, engineers were studying every inch of the alien technology, but she was looking for something specific. Found it, she called out, pointing to what looked like the ship's main computer core. It's exactly what we thought. They've completely digitized everything. Dr. Wilson hurried over, carrying a device that looked like it belonged in a 1950s science fiction movie. "Are you sure this will work?" he asked, setting up the antiquated equipment. "They've got no protection against it," Anna replied, connecting cables to the alien systems. "They're so advanced, they forgot about the basics of electromagnetic interference." The device was simple, a modified Soviet-era radio transmitter. As they powered it up, the alien ship's systems began to flicker and fail. Their advanced quantum computers, designed to resist the most sophisticated cyber attacks, had no defense against raw radio waves disrupting their delicate circuits. Admiral Walker watched from the command center as reports flooded in from captured Imperial vessels. "How long until we can use their own ships?" he asked. "That's the interesting part, sir," Anna reported through her comlink. "We don't need their complex control systems. These ships still follow basic physics. Thrust is thrust, whether it's controlled by a quantum computer or an old joystick." She demonstrated by plugging in what looked like a video game controller from the 1980s. The alien ship's engines responded perfectly to the simple analog inputs. "Sometimes older is better," she grinned. Across the solar system, Earth's forces were making similar discoveries. The Empire had become so dependent on their advanced technology that they'd forgotten about the fundamental principles that governed it. "Sir, look at this," Captain Smith called out, pointing to new sensor readings. "The Imperial reinforcements. They're trying to adapt their shields." Walker studied the data. The Empire's ships were now generating double layers of energy shields, thinking it would stop Earth's projectile weapons. But physics didn't care about their plans. The kinetic energy of a simple metal slug, accelerated to high speed, went right through their defenses. "They still don't understand," Walker mused. "They're trying to solve a simple problem with complex solutions." In the captured Imperial ship, Anna made another breakthrough. "Dr. Wilson, come see their weapon systems." The Empire's energy weapons, while incredibly powerful, required complex calculations and perfect timing to fire. But Anna had discovered that the same power source could be used much more simply. "Look," she demonstrated, bypassing the alien targeting computer and attaching a manual firing mechanism. "We don't need their fancy targeting systems. We can eyeball it, just like old naval gunners did." Dr. Wilson watched in amazement as she fired the energy weapon using what looked like a World War II gun sight. The beam was less precise than the Empire's computer-guided shots, but it was faster and used less power. "Their entire civilization is built on removing human intuition from the equation," Anna explained. "They think more technology always means better results. They forgot that sometimes you need a human touch." Back in the command center, Walker received word that Earth's factories had successfully merged old and new technology. They were now producing hybrid weapons, simple, reliable mechanical systems controlling the Empire's advanced power sources. "Status report," he called out to the fleet. "Imperial forces are falling back past Mars, sir," came the response. "They can't understand why their technology isn't working. Every time they add another layer of complexity, we counter it with something simple." Walker nodded, watching as Earth's retrofitted ships, many still bearing museum identification numbers, pursued the retreating Imperial fleet. The Empire had expected to find primitives playing with toys. Instead, they found a species that remembered every step of their technological evolution and knew exactly when to use each stage. "Send word to all commands," Walker ordered. "The Empire is about to learn why humans keep their history books. Sometimes, The old ways are the best ways. Commander Robert Hayes floated silently in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, his modified space shuttle powered down to avoid detection. Around him, 20 other vessels waited in similar silence, each one a museum piece hastily converted for space combat. Just like submarine warfare in World War II, he whispered to his crew. They're looking for energy signatures, not cold metal in space. The Imperial patrol fleet passed nearby, their sophisticated sensors sweeping the asteroid field for Earth forces. They didn't notice the powered-down human ships, perfectly camouflaged among the rocks. Now, Hayes ordered. 20 ships burst to life, their engines igniting simultaneously. But instead of modern plasma thrusters, they used simple chemical rockets, technology so old that Imperial sensors categorized it as natural asteroid movement. Fire at will, Hayes commanded. The ambush was devastating. Modified naval cannons, loaded with simple tungsten shells, tore through the Imperial ship's shields. The aliens had finally adapted their defenses against most modern weapons, but they still couldn't stop pure kinetic force. This is ridiculous. An Imperial commander's voice crackled through their communication systems. They're using explosive powder to shoot metal. How are we losing to this? Hayes smiled as his crew reloaded their weapons. The Empire couldn't understand that their greatest weakness was their own advancement. They had evolved past the point of understanding simple solutions. Back at Earth Defense Command, Admiral Walker watched the battle unfold. "Status report on Operation Ghost Signal," he'd asked. Lieutenant Anna Reed looked up from her station, where she was working with a team of communications experts. "Ready to launch, sir. The Empire won't know what hit them." Their plan was beautifully simple. While the Empire protected against quantum hacking and AI infiltration, Earth was about to attack them with radio waves and basic computer code from the 1980s. "Execute," Walker ordered. Across the solar system, Earth's forces activated hundreds of simple radio transmitters. The signals were primitive by Imperial standards, so primitive that their advanced systems tried to process them as natural space radiation. That was their mistake. The simple computer viruses, written in ancient programming languages, slipped through the Empire's defenses like ghosts through a wall. Their quantum computers, designed to resist modern AI attacks, had no protection against code so basic it might as well have been written on punch cards. "Imperial fleet communications are going dark," Captain Smith reported. "Their ships can't coordinate. The viruses are overwhelming their networks." In the asteroid field, Hayes watched as the Imperial ships began to lose formation. Without their complex communication systems, they couldn't maintain their sophisticated battle strategies. "All ships, switch to visual signals," Hayes commanded, ordering his fleet to use simple light flashes for communication, just like naval vessels had done for centuries. The Empire's mighty warships, each one carrying enough firepower to level a continent, were being outmaneuvered by humans using technology hundreds of years old. They couldn't jam light signals they didn't know to look for. "This is impossible." The Imperial commander's voice came through one last time before their communications failed completely. "You're savages. You're using outdated toys against the most advanced civilization in the galaxy." "Sometimes the old toys work best," Hayes responded, even though he knew they couldn't hear him anymore. "Contact the Admiral. Tell him the asteroid belt is secured." Back on Earth, Walker received the news with satisfaction. The Empire's sophisticated fleet was in disarray, their complex systems paralyzed by simple attacks they never thought to defend against. "Lieutenant Reed," he called out, "what's the status of those Imperial ships we captured?" "Ready for action, sir," she reported. "We've stripped out all their complex systems and replaced them with basic controls. They're not as efficient now, but they're a lot harder to disable." Walker nodded. The Empire had built their civilization on the assumption that newer always meant better, but humanity remembered every step of their journey to the stars, and that knowledge was proving to be their greatest weapon. "Send word to all commands," he ordered. Phase 2 begins now. Let's show the Empire why humans never throw away their history books. The alert sirens blared through Earth Defense Command as Admiral Walker stared at the massive holographic display. A new Imperial fleet had just emerged from hyperspace, bigger than the first one. They've modified their ships, Captain Smith reported, studying the sensor readings. New shield configurations, supposedly primitive-proof defenses. They think they're ready for our old weapons. Walker allowed himself a small smile. Are the submarines in position? Yes, sir. Soviet-era nuclear submarines, retrofitted for space. The Empire doesn't even know they exist. The new Imperial fleet moved with arrogant confidence. Their ships bristled with countermeasures against ballistic weapons, their sensors calibrated to detect even the smallest energy signatures. Imperial command to Earth forces. A new voice boomed through their communications. I am Grand Admiral Rex. Your primitive tricks won't work anymore. Surrender now, or face total annihilation. Walker pressed a button on his command console. This is Earth Defense Command. Look behind you. In the void of space around Jupiter, 12 modified nuclear submarines activated their engines. These vessels, designed decades ago to hide from sophisticated detection systems on Earth, were completely invisible to Imperial sensors. Launch all tubes, the submarine commander ordered. Dozens of nuclear missiles, their warheads replaced with simple tungsten rods, erupted from the submarine's launch tubes. The Empire's new shields, designed to stop both energy weapons and simple ballistic attacks, had one critical flaw. They couldn't be in two modes at once. Impact in 5 seconds, Captain Smith announced. The Imperial fleet's shields blazed as they tried to switch configurations, but they were too late. The tungsten rods, moving at incredible speeds, tore through their vessels like paper. Impossible. Grand Admiral Rex's voice crackled with rage. Those vessels, they have no quantum drives, no plasma weapons. They're using primitive nuclear power. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways, Walker responded calmly. Professor Wilson, are you ready? In his laboratory, Professor Wilson stood next to what looked like a hastily assembled jumble of old and new technology. Ready, Admiral. The Empire's about to learn another lesson about underestimating primitive science. Wilson's team had discovered something remarkable about Imperial FTL drives. They were unnecessarily complex. By stripping away layers of improvements, added over thousands of years, they had found the basic principles could be replicated with much simpler technology. All ships activate FTL drives, Walker commanded. Across the solar system, Earth's hybrid fleet, a mix of modified museum pieces and captured Imperial vessels, engaged their simplified FTL drives. They weren't as efficient as Imperial versions, but they were far more reliable and nearly impossible to disable. The battle that followed was unlike anything the Empire had ever experienced. Their complex formation was shattered by Earth vessels appearing and disappearing seemingly at random, using simplified FTL jumps that their computers couldn't predict. Status report. Grand Admiral Rex demanded as another of his ships exploded. Their technology. It makes no sense. His tactical officer responded. They're using nuclear power, chemical rockets, and projectile weapons, but they're beating our best ships. In the command center, Walker watched as the Empire's mighty fleet was slowly torn apart by weapons and tactics they had dismissed as obsolete centuries ago. This is why we study history, he said quietly. Every technology, every tactic humanity has ever developed. We remember them all. Sometimes, the old solutions are the best ones. The submarines continued their assault, launching volley after volley of kinetic weapons. Earth's hybrid fleet struck from multiple directions, using tactics developed for wooden sailing ships centuries ago. Send word to all commands, Walker ordered as the Imperial fleet began to retreat. The Empire thought they could beat us by countering our primitive weapons. They forgot that humanity's greatest weapon isn't our technology. It's our memory. We remember every way to fight that we've ever learned. The mighty Imperial reinforcement fleet, sent to crush Earth's resistance, was now running from weapons their civilization had forgotten about millennia ago. They had come expecting to find primitives playing with toys. Instead, they found a species that had mastered both the old and the new. The mood in Earth Defense Command changed instantly when the sensors lit up with thousands of new contacts. The Empire had committed its main fleet, nearly 10,000 ships approaching Earth from all directions. "They're done playing games," Admiral Walker announced, studying the tactical display. "This is their full strength." Lieutenant Anna Reed rushed into the command center, holding a tablet. "Admiral, we decoded their transmissions. They're going to try to overwhelm us with numbers. They think we don't have enough old weapons to fight them all." Walker's face hardened. "They're about to learn another lesson about human ingenuity. Signal all commands. Operation Time Warp is go." Across Earth, hidden bunkers opened to reveal row after row of restored weapons. World War I battleships, retrofitted for space combat, rose on massive launch platforms. Hundreds of vintage fighter planes, modified with space engines, launched from underground hangars. "All hands, battle stations," Walker commanded. "Show them what humanity can do when we're backed into a corner." The Imperial fleet approached Earth with overwhelming force. Their ships filled the sky, blocking out the stars themselves. On their command ship, Grand Admiral Rex smiled coldly. "See how primitive their weapons are now, when faced with the true might of the Empire," he boasted to his officers. "Begin the final attack." But humanity had one last surprise waiting. Major Tom Miller led the first wave, commanding a squadron of P-51 Mustangs modified for space combat. "Just like the Battle of Britain," he told his pilots. "Only this time, we're fighting above the whole Earth." The Empire's ships opened fire with their energy weapons, expecting an easy victory. Instead, they watched in shock as Earth's forces split into smaller and smaller groups, using combat tactics developed over centuries of aerial warfare. "They're everywhere," an Imperial commander shouted. "Our targeting systems can't lock onto them all." Walker's voice came over all frequencies. "All units, commence Operation Time Warp. Show them every way humans have learned to fight." The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. World War II torpedo bombers made attack runs on Imperial capital ships. Civil War-era artillery pieces, mounted on space platforms, fired simple metal shells that ignored energy shields. Vietnam-era helicopter gunships, modified for space, struck from behind asteroids. "This is impossible." Grand Admiral Rex raged as another of his ship groups fell into chaos. "They're using tactics from their entire military history." Lieutenant Reed's voice cut through the Imperial communications. "That's right. We remembered everything. Every battle, every war, every lesson learned. Did you think we'd forget how to fight just because we got better weapons?" The Empire's sophisticated formations began to break apart. Their ships, designed to fight modern space battles, had no protocols for dealing with ancient combat techniques. Every time they adapted to one type of attack, Earth's forces switched to an even older method. "They're fragmenting," Walker observed. "Time for the final push. All units, execute Battle Plan Thermopylae." Earth's remaining forces gathered into what looked like a suicidal charge toward the heart of the Imperial fleet. The Empire's commanders laughed at such an obvious tactical mistake. That was when they discovered that humanity had saved their best surprise for last. The primitive ships weren't just carrying old weapons, they were carrying simplified versions of every weapon humanity had ever invented, all firing at once. Hull breaches on all decks, Imperial officers shouted as their mighty fleet began to crumble. "They're using everything. Ballistics, energy weapons, electronic warfare, even chemical reactions we haven't seen in millennia." Walker watched as the Empire's massive fleet began to retreat in disorder. "Send word to all commands," he ordered. "Push them back. Show them why humanity never forgot its past." The Empire had come expecting to crush primitives. Instead, they faced the combined military knowledge of human history. Every tactic, every strategy, every hard-learned lesson of warfare, upgraded for space, but still following the same eternal principles. And they were running. Admiral Walker stood in the Great Hall of the United Earth Government, watching as representatives from the Galactic Empire approached the peace table. Their once proud uniforms were wrinkled, their faces showing the strain of their unprecedented defeat. Grand Admiral Rex, who had promised to crush Earth just weeks ago, now couldn't meet Walker's eyes as he sat down. "The terms are simple," Walker stated, his voice carrying through the silent hall. "The Empire will recognize Earth's independence and our right to defend ourselves as we see fit." "How?" Rex finally asked, looking up. "How did you defeat our greatest fleet with museum pieces?" Walker gestured to the walls of the hall, where humanity's military history was displayed. Everything from ancient spears to modern spacecraft. "Because we remember every weapon, every tactic, every hard lesson learned. We didn't abandon our past when we moved forward." The peace treaty was signed within the hour. As the Imperial representatives prepared to leave, Lieutenant Anna Reed approached with one final report. "Sir, you should see this," she said, handing Walker a tablet. "Other civilizations are contacting us. They want to learn our primitive military techniques." Walker smiled. Across the galaxy, the story was spreading. How Earth had defeated the mighty Empire using weapons and tactics thousands of years old. The Empire's humiliating defeat had shattered their image of technological superiority. "Dr. Wilson's team made another breakthrough," Reed continued, "by stripping away all the unnecessary complexity from Imperial technology. We've made their systems 10 times more reliable. Sometimes simpler really is better." Major Tom Miller entered the hall, still wearing his flight suit. "Sir, the retrofitted museums are asking what to do with their space-modified exhibits." "Keep them ready," Walker ordered, "and start new museums to show how we won this war. Future generations need to remember these lessons." The Empire's representatives couldn't hide their confusion as they watched Earth's military leaders discussing museums and history. Their own civilization had destroyed all records of their primitive past, considering it embarrassing. "One last thing," Walker called out as the Imperial delegation prepared to board their ship. "We're establishing a military academy. We'd be happy to accept students from the Empire." Grand Admiral Rex turned, his face showing surprise. "You would teach us?" "Of course," Walker replied. "Lesson 1. Never forget your beginnings. Your empire became so focused on advancing that you forgot the foundations your technology was built on. We didn't." As the Imperial ship departed, Earth's cities began their victory celebrations. But in military bases around the world, Walker's orders were already being carried out. World War II aircraft were being carefully preserved alongside their space modifications. Civil War cannon designs were being archived with their modern improvements. Every piece of primitive technology that had helped win the war was being documented for future generations. "What do we do now, sir?" Captain Smith asked, standing beside Walker as they watched the Imperial ship vanish into hyperspace. "Now," Walker smiled, "now we keep remembering. We keep teaching, and we keep all our old weapons ready, just in case. Because humanity's greatest strength isn't our ability to advance. It's our ability to remember where we came from." In orbit above Earth, the combined fleet of modified museum's pieces and hybrid warships stood guard. Old nuclear submarines, now equipped for space travel, patrolled the outer solar system. And in bunkers around the world, every weapon humanity had ever invented was being maintained, ready to defend Earth again. The Empire had learned a costly lesson. True strength doesn't come from having the newest technology. It comes from remembering every step of the journey and knowing when to use each one. As night fell over Earth Defense Command, Walker looked up at the stars. Humanity had won its first interstellar war not through superior technology, but by remembering their past. And as long as they kept those memories alive, Earth would never be defenseless. The Empire's catastrophic defeat had taught the galaxy a simple truth. Never underestimate a species that remembers its history. Sometimes, The old ways are the best ways.